3SI and International Security Systems, where he helped to develop a stakeout system that reduces the danger to the police officers in response to crimes. Since retiring, he has also created a new business, marketing Loughlin's Irish steak sauce, based on his father's recipe. The website laughingly states, "Not only is it good on steaks, it cures hangovers too." Clearly a man of broad experience. Joe?
Thank you so much. Wow. You know more about me than I do. She looked me up online and said, "Yeah, I didn't know you did yoga." And I go, "How do you know that?" That's amazing. This is Brian Moore. Brian Moore was 25 years old in New York City, in Queens. And Brian got out of his car to investigate an armed robbery. And he was shot in the face once. As he's trying to retrieve his weapon, he was shot a second time and killed and died in the streets of New York City, like many officers across this country. Now the reason I'm bringing Brian up is because during this work, so many times I wanted to quit. It was too hard. And for some reason, I grew up in the New York metropolitan area. Brian affected me. I grew up very close to where he was. His father was a New York City policeman, retired, and you can imagine the devastation to the parents. So I had Brian's photo on my desk during the last 3 years of this work to move me forward. So I want to take a moment to mention Brian. Why? Why did the police shoot so many times? Why? Why did the police just shoot the gun out of the guy's hand? Why didn't he just talk to him? Why didn't they shoot, or why did they shoot him in the back? Why didn't they just let him go and find him later? Why didn't they use tasers, or less lethal, or mace? The man was unarmed. Why would they shoot an unarmed person? Why? Why don't they just wing him like they used to? There's a lot of killer cops out there. Well, they shot him for no reason. They can do whatever they want. All they have to do is say they were threatened, and they can start shooting. They're just looking for an excuse. Cops kill people. That's what they do. They just want to be heroes and get involved in a shootout. For God's sakes, it was only a screwdriver. Unarmed. Unarmed. Come on, how can they kill an unarmed person? All the cop has to do is say he was threatened, and then they can shoot. Cops are out of control in this country, and there's an epidemic. They're just looking to engage. That's what they signed up for. Now, all of these comments are bits and pieces of what I've heard from people over the years. So I'm going to stop here for a second before I go to the next slide, and we'll get back to this. I'm going to give you a little bit more about my background. Never in a million years did I ever think I'd be a police officer. In fact, growing up in New York City, I wanted nothing to do with it. I saw what they were doing in the streets, and I had a very sophomoric view, an anti-cop view, like many young people do. And I got involved inadvertently in police work, and it was my calling. And I think that's what it is for 95% of the officers out there. It's a calling, because you have to believe in what you're doing. There are no good answers on a daily basis in regard to what happens. Background in the book. I started when I retired. I really didn't want to look at any police work. I had enough 30 years of police work. It takes a toll on you. It takes a toll on your brothers and sisters, and also on your personal life as well. You see devastating things that people will never see in their entire lifetimes. So I started a book called No Reason, which is a rhetorical title because you can't make sense out of what you see on any given shift in any given day. Police officers work and function in a world that goes far beyond the realm of normal experiences in any given day. What they see, hear, or do in one shift alone, most people will not see in their entire lifetime. Let me frame it up to you like this. Suppose we walk out of here and there's a horrific accident and people are dismembered or dying in front of you. That is going to affect you for the rest of your life. That may be the very first call of the day for the officer. And after they do their reports and go to the hospital, they're on to the next human event. And they find themselves negotiating from one thorny situation to the next, over and over, all day long. the mentally ill, the drug, the deranged, the desperate, the child abuse, the sexual child abuse. Everything from a stolen bike to terrorism and homicide. So people have very little realistic information about police work. When the Michael Brown case came out, Darren Wilson, people probably don't remember the officer's name, I was watching TV and I had already done interviews in this book, No Reason, with officers who had experienced deadly force. I'll get back to that in a minute. And I'm watching the television, I'm going, there's no way it happened like that. Why would the officer do that? Is he crazy? You know, the guy has his hands up and saying, I'm surrendering. I mean, that just doesn't make sense to me. And then the nation convulsed, including all of our media, our professional sports people, news media standing like this, hands up, don't shoot. Now, I know there's a historical umbilical cord to all that, and things like that have happened in the past. But today's police officers are vastly different from the 60s and 70s, when they had no training, when they had no policies and procedures. So that inspired me to focus on the worst possible thing that can happen to any police officer, and that is deadly force. None of us want to be involved in it, and I'll tell you why. Because we've observed other officers go through it. Their lives are devastated. It affects their relationships. In the book, when I'm interviewing officers, I can't tell you how many times I had to stop the tape because they got emotional. Some people that I spoke to that were Marines in war and everything had killed someone, and they started crying. That is the common reaction that I had. I continued to interview people all up and down the East Coast and all over the country. And many officers would start the interview or talk to me and they'd say, I can't do this. I just cannot do this. I want it to be over with. I want to forget about it. They don't. It's with them for the rest of their lives. There are multiple comments inside the book and inside these interviews. I wish it never happened. Why did this person make me do that? This has ruined my life, my relationship, my profession. Many officers, in fact, my last night, it's illustrated in the book, as interim chief, we had a police shooting, and both those officers who were involved in it were young men. They had left the police department. That's a common thing. Another common thing that happens in this country is police suicide, because you're left with so much trauma, and you get detached from this very society that you're protecting. So that's what motivated me to move forward and interview people. Now, I can't express to you what it was like sitting across someone and watching their body language, their emotions come out, or people telling me things that, geez, I never talked about this before, but after this event, my whole body was shaking. I eliminated it, and I had to go in the corner, and I didn't know what was happening to me. I didn't tell anybody. It's devastating. Real life is grotesque, dirty, disturbing, and has consequences all over. In the word of many officers, there's no good outcomes in this. Someone lost their loved one, you know, a child, a mother, a daughter, and the officer is faced with living with the fact that they've killed another human being. They're traumatized by this. So the book starts out in my city with one of our officers, James Sweat, getting stabbed 11 times. I was there after the event, and a rookie police officer, Glenn McGarry, who had to kill the man who did that. And the book ends in Watertown, Massachusetts, with the Boston bombers throwing pipe bombs and also shooting at the officers. It's stunning. It's stunning. So there are a lot of things in the book that I try to cover, but I'm trying to express the humanity behind the badge in the worst possible thing that can happen to you. And what's amazing to me is when I'm watching the media and everything, you'll see people talk about the police like it's some bigoted entity composed of commodities that are all thinking the same thing. We don't all get along with each other, you know. Just like any job. It's, they're human beings, just like all of us. And I'll also watch how they express deadly force and the questions I want to get back to. Some of the big ones I want to address is why do they shoot for no reason, unarmed? Threaten, the linguistics behind this, and then I'm going to go through a couple of these slides. This presentation is made for a very, very large audience. It goes on, but I'm just going to clip through a couple of things here. These are some of the common beliefs people have. Bullets will knock someone down, an unarmed person is not dangerous, videos will tell the whole story. All police are well trained and can shoot with precision. People armed with a knife or a hammer are not as dangerous. Shotguns and rifles will blow people off to their feet. I saw it on TV, Facebook, Twitter. I heard from a friend that cops did this. Threat, all they have to say is threat. And basically what is, in my view, is ideals and bits and pieces of information have trumped the reality of these events. And the pernicious and pervasive rhetoric that has occurred over the years has had a dramatic effect on our profession. And in fact, we're facing consequences now. Society is facing consequences now. Nobody wants to sign up. My city is down like 30 people. I'll go to the police departments on my other job, they're down 100 people. They're down. Senior officers are leaving, and young officers don't even want to join because, or young people don't want to join because, I even heard a conversation one time in a barbershop. Kids were talking, well, I'm thinking about becoming a cop. And everybody turned around and said, why would you want to do that? Why would you want to kill people? Now, the chances of getting involved in a deadly force incident are minute. And I'll give you some real information before we get to this. Most officers, 99% of them go through their entire career, self included, never ever using their weapon. That's the norm. It's a small percentage that this happens to. Let's do some facts. There's a population in this country of about 325 million people, 323 to 325 million people. There's another 11 million in this country that we don't know about or whatever. The chance of anyone, black, white, green, or yellow, getting killed by a police officer is 0.00033 of 1%. Then you do the demographics, it goes even lower, 0.0012 of 1%. I did a lot of research during this book, aside from interviewing people. And people have been led to believe, and actually the director Comey, I don't know what your feelings on him at the time, said, we have a chasm of distrust in our communities based on anecdotal information and people who have limited understanding of the realities of police work. Twitter goes out, Facebook goes out, yep, the police did it again. Without any facts, circumstances, or contours of the events. When I pull up on a scene, I've been in multiple shootings in Portland where officers had to kill someone. It takes us hours to just get a foundational preliminary understanding of what happened. In the meantime, it's out on the news, you know, that Portland police or Milwaukee police or whatever have shot another person, like it happens all the time. It doesn't in the context of the population. Let me stop here for a minute. Any death is horrible, period. None of us want to do that. We're trained to help people. That's why the common denominator is people want to help people. And that's why I signed up. When I looked at Portland, I said, wow, it's not New York. New York is kind of crazy. I can make a difference here. That's a lot of what most police officers have this feeling. Are there some jerks? Yeah. Are there some incompetent people? Yeah. This book does not excuse bad cops, court tactics that may lead to something horrific, or a horrible mistake that may happen in a violent event. So I'm going to clip down here a little bit more and talk about these things as we go along and answer questions. As I mentioned, these crime scenes are a very complex undertaking. It takes weeks, months, years before we get a full picture of who, what, when, where, how, why. So, you know, I've been pulled up at a scene where the officer is engaged in something. Sometimes I don't even know which officer it is. Let's say half this room is filled with people who are trying to do a crime scene and multiple protracted investigations. You have internal affairs, you have the use of force team, you have the district attorney's office, you have the attorney general's office, you have all the immediate. These things are very complex. It's not TV. It's not the movies. It doesn't work like that. Real life is disturbing, and it takes us a long time. I've been at a crime scene, shooting crime scene for at least an hour, and then someone will tell me, no, it happened over there. I go, well, wait a second. I thought, my point is, it takes time. Unfortunately, with our lightning fast media now and what happens, the word goes out and the population starts going crazy. Case in point, hands up, don't shoot. That never happened. That never actually happened. Our own Department of Justice went down under the Obama administration and investigated it. 3 separate medical examiners, multiple private investigations. The U.S. attorney, the United States attorney, the local district attorney, and everybody came up with the same thing. Unfortunately, that's what's convulsed our nation, and then we saw the result of that. Things are calming down now. My passion is to educate people, going back to Finding Amy and other things that I've done over the careers about these are the realities of police work. These are the human beings behind the badge, which is going to bring me to my next slide. In the book, I illustrate 2 officers who were killed in the line of duty right in front of their fellow officers. This is David Wife and his lovely wife, Jennifer, who I've spoke to many, many times. David was a young, happy guy. That's the face of law enforcement. He has 2 kids, or had 2 kids, and obviously his beautiful wife is devastated and their lives are destroyed. It's illustrated in the book. He's going into a methamphetamine house. He's shot in the head several times. Another officer shot, and they don't know why he's laying on the ground, and it's a very confusing scene. That's not the focus of the book. The other officer that I illustrate is Michael Briggs. In 2006, I went to his funeral, and he was a big, lovable, happy guy, family man. His family wife didn't even want to speak to me. They're so devastated till this day. And these things go on for years. There are civil suits that go on for years and years and years. That is the face of law enforcement. And the devastation that occurs to the community, the people surrounding the community, and of course, everyone's loved ones is pretty horrible. One of the things when I was at the FBI Academy, they would bring a busload of survivors, kids, moms, dad, wives, husbands, to Quantico to get a tour and have a fun picnic during the day. I almost can't even talk about it. But to see these kids crying and calling for their dads and moms is pretty horrible. At the same time, the same thing occurs in our society when someone's life is lost by the actions of a police officer. But I want to read this before I continue. I got a lot to cover here. To talk about the officers that get killed, that is a blip on the news, no one hears about it. In the eulogy of 2 fallen officers, Detective Amanda Hayworth and Roger Castillo lost their lives in the line of duty in January 2011. Chief James Loftus of the Miami-Dade Police Department expressed the reality that police officers face every day. Somewhere in this country, oh my God, we know for sure somewhere in this state and somewhere in this county, there is someone wearing a uniform or wearing plain clothes. They're stopping a car. They're approaching an alley. They're searching a house. They're driving up to something and their antenna is up and they say, something is just not right here. This is not a regular call. And you know what, folks? They're afraid. They're afraid. That is the law enforcement elephant. They're scared. And you know what they're scared of? It's not because they're cowards. It's because what flashes in front of their eyes is everything that they have to lose, their families, and everything that is important to them. And when that happens, and everything in their body says they're scared, and when fear is running through them, and everything flashes in their mind for self-preservation, that screams, run! They do not run. They move forward and see it through. That is why I love them, and that is why I grieve them. Now the rest of the book, these are officers that there's an officer down memorial page. In fact, I'm going to get into unarmed in a minute here, but just a few weeks ago, a Weymouth police officer was shot 3 times. So we had a Maine officer shot, probably like 3 or 4 in New England. But every single day I belong to this officer down memorial, and these are the faces of law enforcement. They're black, they're white, they're Hispanic, they're female, they're male, and generally wonderful people. The movies. This is a clip that I may show here quickly, and then I want to go into, there's a lot of stuff here because time's going to fly. Let's see if we can play it. Let's see what my mouse is.
6:22. Officer needs help. Shots fired. Suspect is down. Express yourself. Coffee bar on Oceanfront Walk, Venice. I need paramedics and supervisor.
It's not clean like that.
Multiple trajectory of your shot this time.
This is TV. It's clean. It's not reality.
It wasn't complicated. He didn't get shot off? He did not. But you could see that he was armed? I saw him reach for his gun. When he hit the ground, the Glock fell out. Whole thing took 2, maybe 3 seconds. You did not see the weapon before you fired? I did not. But his body language was clear. He was armed.
The movies, even I, before I became a police officer, you know, I believed in the movies. I believed in, you know, someone gets shot and they fall down and stop. You know, I believed that, you know, people would listen to me, not spit at me and try to attack me. In my first week, I was on the ground with a guy pounding on me, and I'm going, I'm a good guy, I'm the police, this is my thinking. You know, why are you doing this to me? The movies and TV and video games is not real. Now I'm going to show you the real face. This is an example of an officer who had to kill someone. He was brave enough. This comes from officer-involved research that was done by another police officer. And this is the example, if I can figure out what it is. Oops.
What bothers me is how could a person put himself in that situation, jeopardize his life, and the people that it's going to affect, it's not him, it's his family. It's the officer.
Because no matter who pulled the trigger, the end result was the same. A mother and a father are without a daughter. Friends are without a loved one. No one wins on any end. The only thing I walked away with that night was my life. Everything else is a loss. You know, the family of that girl will never understand. I will never understand. You know, I'm done asking questions. I'm done thinking, why did she make me do that? Because the bottom line is it doesn't matter. Not now. I could have helped her. I wanted to help her. I envisioned, when I first got there, even with the gun, I envisioned me sitting at the hospital with her, talking to her. There is not a day that goes by that I don't see her face and wish she could let me help her.
That is the common denominator that I had in my book with the interviews. Police officers go to violent events every single day with people with weapons. There are 34,000 arrests a day in this country. There are millions and millions of contacts a day in this country. You'll never hear about it. There are millions of good works and good deeds where we use our own money, our own time to help people. The clip you just saw is the common denominator I saw throughout this. The devastation that affects them and their families, and the fact that you have to live with the loss of another human being. When we go back to the original questions, why didn't the police use a taser? Why didn't they talk to them? Why didn't they de-escalate? All these buzzwords you hear on TV. We do that all day long. Think about it. 34,000 arrests every day. Millions of contacts, most of which are pretty good. But police also find themselves, probably 70% of our time is negotiating through the myriad of social service systems. With the drug, the deranged, the broken kids, the broken moms, and with no good answers. It's the cop at 3 in the morning that's left with, what do I do? You know, it's the cop who's left holding a bag with a 3-year-old kid at 2:14 a.m. And it goes on. We have to look at and broker better conversations nationwide about the humanity of our officers. Again, not to dismiss that there aren't bad officers and bad cops. We know that. And good organizations do everything in their power to get rid of those people because it affects us. You know, if I'm working a beat and I'm doing a great job and everybody gets along with me, and then I got some jerk coming in screwing everything up, it's not a good thing for us, the organization, or the community. But usually they get weeded out. So that's the common denominator that we've had throughout this book. I'm going to read some more too. Back into what I was talking about as far as less lethal. The buzzword now is de-escalate. Well, that's the first thing I learned in 1978. It just was called something else. When I started in New York, I remember the sergeant saying, I went into my first few domestics where it was really violent, and the guy flipped the whole house out, knocked the teeth out, the woman ripped her earrings out, and I was stunned. I didn't know this happened. I never saw this happen. My parents never fought. I was raised in a Roman Catholic, Irish family of 5 kids, you know, by nuns too. There was a lot of respect, and there was a lot of, you don't mess with your mom, you know, and I couldn't believe what I was seeing. And I'll never forget the sergeant, Buddy Beck, he's deceased now. He goes, Joey, you gotta calm people down. You gotta bring them down so you can work with them. Some people aren't workable, but that's when we have to take action. You know, and the other thing is use of force. You know, people there's a lot of confusion about use of force. I don't want, if a guy's going crazy in his room, putting his head through windows and putting his hands on burners and angry at the world or on PC, crack, or whatever, I don't want to go hands-on with him because it's going to hurt. I'm going to get hurt. So we want to take the person into custody safely. But people do not do a 1 out of 12 and turn around. If someone doesn't want to go to jail, it takes, that's why you see 5 police officers rolling around. Because hands can do a lot of damage. Hands kill. Back to the less lethal. We use less lethal. Pepper mace, beanbag rounds, taser. A taser is used every day in this country and Canada, every 2 minutes. Right? Tasers, a little bit about tasers. Criminals and people who are accustomed to dealing with the police, because the police don't really deal with most of general society. We're not dealing with good people who are not their best days, rather. But criminals can be, you can hit a guy with a taser and they sweep the wires and still come out the police. I have a couple of examples here. People can get hit with beanbag rounds, batons. So I've been in multiple, cases where we use it for it doesn't work. You know, if someone jumps out a 3rd-story window, somehow lands in the parking lot, runs away. These are the things we're faced with every day. Point being is we take a lot of violent people into custody every single day in this country at our own risk, at our own emotional peril, at our own physical peril. Case in point, 60,000 to 70,000 assaults on officers every year. Do you see any of those videos? Do you hear anything about that? 16,000, let's count the numbers up, require medical attention. Like Jimmy Sweat, who was stabbed in the beginning of the book. Or Jared Ressman, who was shot 7 times in Jacksonville, Florida, and survived. He's still working today. Back to we take violent people into custody every single day. We use less lethal means every single day. We de-escalate all day long. You'll never hear about it. 60 to 70,000 assaults, 16,000 require medical attention. Hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of officers are shot every year to survive to breathing tubes, blind, crippled, destroyed, disfigured. Do you ever see those videos? You ever hear anything about that? No. You're going to hear that the police are racist and out of control and looking for one segment of our population. And we play that over and over again, and there's an epidemic of police shootings. There is not. Now, I know people don't like to hear facts, but facts are stubborn things, going back, I think Mark Twain said that. There's another hundreds of officers who are stabbed, cut, sliced, box cutters, illustrated in the book, and survive to a crappy life. And what's amazing is, there's a lot of officers like Jared Ressman, shot in the mouth over shoplifting, and that's illustrated in the book, I may read that. Shot 7 more times, finally he killed the offender, and one of the most observable things that officers have is when they're shooting that people don't go down. Why aren't they stopping? Why isn't he stopping trying to shoot me? They were this close. And Jared finally somehow got up and got his weapon out after he was shot in the mouth and he felt his jaw hanging off, right? And he goes, wow, that guy punched me really hard. Well, it wasn't a punch. The kid was just shoplifting, and he was chasing through the mall. And this is another defining point in the book. Most of these events happen on routine calls. They're over in 3 seconds. The Michael Brown incident was over in 42 seconds. And the list goes on. But back to Hollywood. There's not some pithy dialogue and, you know, put the gun down, and it happens so fast it's over. And it's devastating. And most officers say, what just happened? Why did it happen? And then when you tell them the person's deceased, they're broken. They break down. I hope the guy lives. I hope the gal lives. That's their expression to me in the book. Jared Reston, Jimmy Sweat. Jimmy Sweat, who was stabbed 11 times in the city of Portland. And Glenn McGarry, who saved his life by holding onto his carotid artery. They're both commanders in the police department. So there's, besides the officers that are blind, crippled, and have bleach in their eyes, or stabbed with hypodermic needles that you never hear, there's a lot of us that want to go back to work. It's amazing that these people are back at work. So 16,000 medical attention assaults on officers, hit by shovels, cinder blocks, stabbed, shot. You're never going to hear about that. You will not see those videos. You can if you belong to police1.com, or look on YouTube. It illustrates, definitely in my view and my experience, that police officers nationwide do everything in their power to avoid deadly force. And going back 25 years, anybody in my department that got involved in one, the rest of us are going, I don't want anything to do with that. You know, that guy is still under investigation 6 months later, a year later, and now he's got a civil suit against him, and he quit the police department. It's not TV, it's not the movies. How am I doing on time?
Well, probably 7-8 minutes,
Ooh,
and
okay.
then we'll do questions.
Okay, real life is grotesque, disturbing. I mean, I'm not. This is meant for another thing. That's the humanity behind the badge. This is right after Officer Familia was sitting in her car in the Bronx and was shot in the head multiple times, just sitting in her car, female police officer. And this is what we do. We hold hands, we hug privately. Yes, we have a tough veneer because we have to. We don't know who we're going to deal with or what we're going to deal with on any given day. More officers that were killed, you'll never hear about. I'm going to show you a quick video, if I can. This is a police officer, black police officer, and a black suspect. The guy was driving crazy, he finally went off the road and crashed. He's nude, and he comes out and, oops, let's see if we can play it. He's totally nude, runs into traffic, he's on crack or PC or something.
Bill just ran into 95 and
Now he gets hit by a car.
Can I get a stop? Bill is naked on 95.
How you respond to 112 a constable there at 1335?
He's not rolling around because he got hit, he's on some kind of drug.
You're
And
talking
this is
about
where people exhibit
95
superhuman strength.
that's backed up right now?
Now, he realizes the police officer's there and he attacks the officer, which is common. Right now, he's just flopping around, he's going for an ambulance. He probably should get closer to him, but he knows. His frame of reference is, okay, this guy's on crack, PCP or something. And he can get hurt. So he has his taser out, you can see the taser, the left-hand side, left-hand side. Now he gets up and realizes the cop's there. He's saying that to the cop. They hit him with a taser. Taser does nothing. He jumps on the police officer. He's ripping the taser from him. And ultimately gets shot. Now he's running around. Shot several times. This is the thing. People just don't fall down when they get shot. A person can take multiple rounds. It's equivalent to taking Major League softball pitch. I know this is kind of raw, but it goes on. A lot of cops come. They get the guy into custody, and he's deceased. But you'll hear the officer cursing like, F, what just happened? What, you know, to the supervisor. The supervisor said, go back to your car. And then he's under investigation. Premier Rice is a horrible case. If you remember him, he's a boy in, I want to say outside of Chicago. Cleveland. And this is the face you see on the news. What the officers see is, and what the call is, a man in a hood waving a gun around. So they're thinking man, they're thinking, you know, gun in a dangerous area, which is common. Now this, in my view, is a poor tactic. Why they moved up to the car, to the person, maybe they didn't know, I don't know. But as they pulled up, the guy has a hood on, they don't know it's a kid, and he probably doesn't look like that. That's what the media puts out. The guy takes the gun out, police officer shoots him. Then they realize it's a kid, and they're devastated, they're ruined, their lives are over. It may arise to his family. There are no good outcomes. It's horrible. That is a mistake that, in my view, is poor tactics. Real information to provide to people is ambush killings are way up, 167% in the last 2 years. I already went through the assaults, and 11%, this is one thing I want to cover before I do some reading, and we'll stop. And I know I'm covering a lot of ground here. We want that. Okay, we talked about tasers and weapons and less lethal and de-escalation, which we do. What we don't talk about is unarmed. Now, every year in this country, 3,000 plus people are killed by unarmed people. In the business, we say hands kill. Now, I can do a lot of damage by picking up my phone and charging it by the time you count to 3. And I'm in my 60s. So we know that an unarmed person is extremely dangerous. They could be trained in martial arts. They could be on rage, PCP, adrenaline. We have many cases where people are not even on any drugs, but they're such in rage that they pick police officers up, knock them down, strangle them, stomp on them, just like the officer in Weymouth a couple of weeks ago. He was totally unarmed, grabbed a rock, smacked the officer in the head, shot him multiple times, he's dead. And so are 2 other officers in June. And we're transporting a prisoner. Now, people can get out of handcuffs, believe it or not. That's another thing when I witnessed. The guy gets out of his handcuffs, attacks an officer, there's a male and female officer there, rips the gun out, kills that officer, and kills the female officer. So, 3,000 people a year are killed by unarmed people. And I've seen many domestics and many violent situations where some people have died and many others have survived. I don't know how. 11% of officers are killed every 2 years by unarmed people. The other thing I wanted to cover is that why do the police shoot so many times? Because if us 3 are involved in something, what you're seeing is totally different from what I'm seeing. When you go into tunnel vision, there are physiological and psychological imperatives that happen during fight or flight. When the heart gets up to 145 beats per minute, 175 beats per minute, bad things start happening. You're going to tunnel vision. In the words of officers in the book, he says, like going into a matrix. Everything goes in slow motion. People seem like they're very far away or very close to you. It's all illustrated in these interviews. And it's stunning what happens to these officers. Then time goes back afterwards. It's all described. So again, real life is very, very different. I'm going to read one more thing and then we'll stop and do some questions. There's so much to cover. But this officer, his name is Officer Cotto. He was in Hartford. And a man, they went to a violent call where people were sliced with a box cutter. And they ended up getting in the room. And this guy had a box cutter on the bed and went to slice Officer Cotto's stomach. And somehow he's backed into a corner. You want to get time, distance, and space. Somehow he gets backed into a corner, and he goes like this, and he gets his weapon out and shoots the guy. And the first thing he said to his partner, he goes, "Oh my God, I'm sorry I ruined your life." Because they know what's going to happen to them. And he was devastated. He had all sorts of terrible problems. His mother even said, "You know, we don't kill people." And he goes, "I never wanted this to happen. This was the worst thing that ever happened in my life. It ruined my family, my health. I was suspended, I'm being civilly sued." But this is the aftermath either. When police officers are back on the street, they go back on the street. I never really dealt with my shooting. I never processed it. It started coming to surface and I just put it away. My relationship with my kids and mother was gone. Financially, I was broken. And now I'm being part of multiple investigations. Things just started bubbling up. I started getting very big anxiety attacks every time before my shift. every time they called my number, especially if it was a weapons call, I was like, oh my God, am I gonna have to shoot somebody? Am I gonna have to go through that again? I don't wanna do that. It's just a dark, dark feeling. Am I going to be out for another 16 months? Is this going to happen again? Oh my God, is this going to happen again? I started calling out sick a lot. I just wanted to give myself a breather. Okay, just take a couple of days off, I'll be okay. It all culminated 7 or 8 months ago. I had dropped my son off at summer camp. He didn't want me to drop him off, and I'm leaving. I started thinking, am I a good dad? Am I a good person? Am I a good cop? Like, am I enough in this world? I started thinking about my shooting, and then about all the guys I lost overseas, and people I saw hurt on my job. I couldn't even drive. I pulled over to the side of the road, and the only way I can describe it is I had a breakdown. I lost it. And I was reasoning in my mind, what the hell do I do? Who am I? I don't know if I can do this job anymore. I dread every next call. I'm wondering, is this going to be my last? Am I going to have to take someone's life? It was about an hour and a half before my shift started, and I went to a supervisor. I kept keeping this inside until finally a good lieutenant came up to me and got me help. That's common. That is common. It's not gunslinging cops and TV in the movies. So I hope I gave you some relative, realistic information. And I'm hoping that this work, this book, and I have to mention Kate Clark-Flora, because she's an amazing person. She's in her 20th book right now, and I could never have gotten to this juncture because I'm telling you, the stacks and stacks of cases were this big, and it took us years. And Kate and I wrote this together, and it was a long journey, so I want to acknowledge her. And thank you for coming. I'm glad to take questions, and I hope this work makes a difference.
Go ahead.
Guy in the back, man in the back.
Do you support citizen concealed carry, and could you please explain a little bit about the gun laws in Maine and background checks and that kind of thing? I'm a little bit confused.
Well, you're allowed to have an open carry in Maine now. I understand it's changed since I retired. You know,
I thought concealed carry was okay now.
Concealed carry? Yes, you have to go to your local police department and apply for an application, and I don't have a problem with concealed.
It doesn't make you nervous that more people are going to be having guns?
There's a lot of people, listen, there's a lot of people with guns out there, a lot. In my view is, so anytime I'm approaching anybody, I mean, there could be people in this room that have guns on them right now, I don't know. But as a police officer, that's your first thought. What is this person thinking? What are they doing? And, you know, it's the proverbial traffic stop, but that's not where things happen. Things happen in minor investigations. Now, here's my other feeling. You know, I want nothing to do with guns. I had enough guns. I ran a SWAT team and all that stuff. But most people out there are not trained, including cops, to the level that everybody thinks. So there's a lot of fools out there carrying guns around, and they can't even use them. I guarantee you. They'll have time, they won't be able to get it out, they won't be able to shoot accurately. Even police officers involved in shooting can be this close and miss multiple rounds. I'm not big on guns, but as far as the law goes, if someone wants to carry and is properly trained, like driving a car, and is prudent about it, that's okay. But there's a lot of guns out there, a lot of weapons. Yes, sir.
Thanks for coming today. I really mean that. That's not a platitude. I really mean it. This is very important stuff that you've done. And I'm intensely interested in this, and what got my interest has been kind of festering probably for 10 years now. We had a case in Walterboro, and I'm trying to make a point here.
Yeah, sure.
We had a case in Walterboro, maybe as much as 10 years ago, where a young reserve cop with 100 hours of training pulled over a carload of teenagers in the middle of the night for some minor thing, a light bulb out or something. And he identified the driver, and then he says, "How much is the ID for everybody else?" One of the kids got out of the passenger side, ran into the woods, ran off. Instead of calling for backup or whatever you do, the cop chased him into the woods. He says that the kid grappled with him in the dark, knocked off his glasses. He was myopic, he couldn't see without his glasses. He was overweight, out of shape, and grappled with the kid, and ended up drawing his gun while grappling with the kid, and emptied the magazine into the back of the kid's head.
Okay, never heard that one.
Yeah, this happened. Of course, there were multiple lawsuits.
What happened in the investigations?
Well,
what was it?
And this is one of the points I'd like you to address. Another point I'll make quick is that
Sure.
the comment in the press from the police chief, and this is in print, you can look it up. The police chief said, well, the kid would be alive today if he hadn't run off.
That's not a good comment.
No, it's not. It's not good. You could equally say that he
Right.
could be alive today if the cop didn't chase him in the woods.
Right.
Or he didn't get up that morning, or he had
Yeah.
a different breakfast or something. All kinds of logic there. But it was investigated by the Attorney General.
Yeah.
Right. And the Attorney General concluded that, well, at the instant that the officer pulled the trigger, he felt threatened. His life was in danger. And that probably was true. That's probably legally accurate to my mind as a layman. But the bigger question is, what happened to the training of this officer?
Exactly.
What happened, and what happened to the response by the police chief?
Right.
And this kid is dead, and yeah, he was kind of a ne'er-do-well. He'd had a record of, transporting liquor in his car and other things like that. So he thought he had a reason to run. But when you're 18 years old, you do stupid things.
Yeah, I ran from NYPD a lot.
I did stupid things when I was 18.
I got caught a few times.
Yeah, when you're
It wasn't
16,
good.
17, 18-year-olds, you do dumb things.
Right.
And this kid did dumb things. And it's, so.
There's a lot, I'm sorry to interrupt you.
Yeah, but
There's a lot there.
Yeah, my question is have things changed, do you think, since that? We're probably talking 10 years ago. Are there
Yes.
better training requirements now?
Yes.
And are there better investigatory techniques? Because it seems to me, in this particular case, the Attorney General investigated, but the Attorney General is a cop. They're the top cop in the state.
Right.
So you have one cop investigating the other cops. Shouldn't there be a different technique for investigating?
Well,
these things?
actually, no, that's not the case. Look, there's a lot, you got a lot to cover in here.
Yeah,
That's
I know.
a big discussion. I'm going to start off, let me start off right where the notion that cops are all in cahoots with each other, and there's the blue wall of silence.
Yeah.
That ain't gonna happen. Not since I started 20 years ago, 25 years ago. It's those individuals are totally removed from us. And if the notion that they're gonna put their reputation, their lives, their careers, their family on the line to cover a cop is crazy. I'm not saying it hasn't happened.
Yeah.
60s, 70s, and all that. Back then, when there were no policies, no procedures, and investigations were different, and there weren't the tools out there, that's what people are stuck on. I think people go back in time like cops are like it was in the 60s and 70s. Every single day we work good organizations, not all organizations, like Portland Police, would change a policy, I'd say on a weekly basis, because every week you're seeing something that's unprecedented. Even in our own department. So, for example, like that case, we have a use of force team, right? They're separate from the CID. Then you have the criminal investigation team. And we all go in our groups and investigate. Then you have the outside groups, the Attorney General's office, the medical examiner's office. There are multiple angles on these things from burials, and the notion that anyone's going to put their life or reputation on the line by saving a police officer is crazy. So the investigation, I don't know what happened in that case.
Yeah, sure.
I'm going to start 100 hours of police training is not enough. I think we don't take reserves in Portland. They go through a 3-month academy, which is standard nationwide, where you stay overnight. Then you get out and with your field training officer for 6 months. It takes you literally 5 years before you can really feel like and read things and work with things and not be terrified. So there's a lot there to cover, but to boil it down, things have dramatically changed even in the last year, even in the last 2 years. With forensics, reconstruction, policies and procedures, cameras, all those things come into play. But I'll always hear the cops got together and they cover each other. He really isn't a cop. He's an attorney and investigator. It's not. And I've seen them because we've come into we're doing our investigation in Portland, and we have like, hey, this is our investigation. We're the best team to do this. And then the AG's office comes in, and now we don't know them, and they're looking for what's wrong, what's right. And one of the biggest answers we've had after every crime scene, I said, okay, what went right? What can we do better? We try not to focus on the wrong. And let's make a new policy on this and a new procedure, which we've done right to the day I walked out the door. But that's a horrible case. I don't know the circumstances about it, or if that's the way it's really portrayed.
Do you find that the big city departments are a little ahead on this than the
Yeah,
rural?
some of them are, some of them are. I'm connected, I work with commanders all over the country. I've been everywhere in the country from Detroit to Los Angeles to NYPD. NYPD has done a fabulous job of dropping the number of shootings and also admitting with the community where crime is coming from in the lower socioeconomic, what I like to call is no socioeconomic areas. And when they do something, whether it's a SWAT call out or a shooting, they go into the community the next day and go, here's what happened, here's why, to try to broker better understandings. Now supposedly NYPD was the most racist, stop and frisk and everything. I think they had used deadly force a grand total of 8 times last year. You know what I mean? Now back in the 60s and 70s, it was thousands. And it was also thousands of police officers. So we've done a lot of work to get to current day. However, because of the current crisis in law enforcement, where nobody wants to join, it takes you 5 years to get really a good level of understanding how to work out there. We're having a crisis in law enforcement. Numbers are down, and unfortunately society is going to suffer the consequences. Here's what I say. What the police are going through in this country right now is exactly what happened to the service people who came back from Southeast Asia. They were all baby killers, they were all horrible people, people were spitting at them, throwing things at them. In all the inner cities, I've worked with these guys and gals, as soon as you pull up, you're met with cameras in your face and people are screaming at you, calling you racist and spitting on you. Watch. After the Vietnam War, it was probably 10 years later when society said, oh my God, we're so sorry, we had no idea. Too late. Too late. Now we're better understanding to our veterans. In war and in police work, there are horrible mistakes, terrible accidents, poor training, all those things come into play. But we're much better off than we were years ago. To follow up with that, it's going to be 10 years for us to recover from this. And here's what's going to happen, in my view, if I'm still alive. People are going to realize what police officers have to go through in reality, and that the tiny percent, it's less than 1% that tarnishes the badge. And I hope this work does something. Next question.
Yeah.
Ma'am?
I would like to thank you along with this gentleman for coming today. I am from Brooklyn and Manhattan.
Hey.
My mother is a New York City policeman, and my other brothers are New York City firemen, and I have nephews who are New York City firemen. The firemen in Manhattan take over many of the responsibilities of the policemen.
They do.
Horrible things like throwing infants in incinerators and things that you cannot even imagine, okay? And if we take any message away today, it would be, do not believe what you see on television. It is never accurate. There is always the other side. And the policemen do a good job. And the things that they face in the big cities are horrific. You cannot make a judgment in a little town like Scott or any other little rural community because the life is totally removed from what happens in the big cities. And we need to be aware of that.
Even in Portland.
Yes.
Portland is a microcosm of any big city. There are 82 languages spoken in the downtown high school. It's a complex environment.
Yes.
There's drugs, the mentally ill, the homeless, guns, ammo. It's changed dramatically. So when you're a police officer, it's 2 or 3 in the morning and you're going into a home of Sudanese or Somali. Nobody speaks English. There's blood all over the walls. You're trying to figure out it's hard enough for us to talk to people in English. And it's so hard. It's such a complex environment.
And it's emotional.
And it's emotional. It's always, people don't call 911 and say, well, sometimes that happens actually. But anything you can think of, I work with cops from all over the world, and every time you think you heard something, oh, did you hear what happened to Mike? And they go, oh, and you see some horrific story, like the baby was dug up, or like what you said. And I'm going, what? It's just crazy the stuff you hear and see. And I, in fact, don't even remember half the things I went on. I'll get with a group of officers and they said, hey, remember the guy that was stabbed and he was running around the house and jumping off the wall? I go, I wasn't there. Well, I was. I buried it.
Let's take 2 more questions.
Okay, a twofold question. Has the screening, the recruitment, and the interview process improved in terms of hiring officers, that's number one, and number two, what about PTSD support and counseling after? Is that increased? I'm hoping that does.
What's the question?
Say again, ma'am?
The interview, the recruitment
Right.
and interview process, is that the psychological screening, I would say, is that improved to hire the right kind of officer, and which isn't 100%? And then secondly, PTSD
I got it.
support and counseling.
I got it. The background and interview process is protracted. We try to get the most qualified people we can to be in this job. And hence, if you go to the academy for 3 months and then you're with a field training officer for 6 months and getting reviewed every day, there is a process. It's much better than what we had when I started. Or, you know, in the 70s, even when I was there in the 70s in New York, here's your gun, here's your stuff, just go get bad guys. You have no idea what you do, you're terrified. So it's grown tremendously in good organizations. The problem we're having now is people aren't applying for police, and so now they're going to change how they do business, or maybe bring down the qualifications, which is not good for our society. New York experienced that years ago. New York experienced it where they started taking people who were really not qualified. They had a major problem in the early 80s. Now there's a better window. Not to say they'll ever get through, but that's your first part. The second part, PTSD, no. I've been working for years in my department, we started a peer support team, an employee assistance program, but cops are a resilient bunch. They don't want to show their emotions until it's too late. So I'd be in a hospital room and I see some police officer crying in the back. I'm like, what's going on? I just can't see another dead kid. And I go, come here. So we started a peer support team. But nationwide, it's one of the it falls woefully down the list, which should be one primary. We've got to help these individuals. There should be a 5-year psychological assessment. There should be ongoing systems, but training budgets, all those things are cut, and you're left to manage it amongst yourselves. That's something we need to do. Yes, ma'am. Oh,
Let's get this guy here. He's been.
oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
I just have 3 short questions.
Good luck.
Well, the answers should be short. Do you look at any of the work that Sir Robert Peel did back in the 18th or 19th century, where he had a way of dealing with what was then a real hellhole in London?
Yes.
Second question is there any, I want to apologize to the women, is there any implied bias if you have a female police officer and a male officer responding to the same situation?
So you mean if a male and female?
Right.
Okay, first part, Peel's principles, the police are the people and the people are the police, community policing. I ran the community policing division for years. You have to engage the community. You have to get out of your cars, you have to make contact, and that's how things work. When we do that, it changes the whole dynamic. Problem is, the numbers in the police forces have dropped dramatically, and now we're running around chasing 911 calls. We got to get back to community policing, because we know it works. We have to have robust, infused federal monies to bring back community policing in a better way. We all say we do it, but you can't do it when you go on 911 calls all the time. That's the first part. The second part, I think women have broken a lot of barriers. We've had major commanders in our community in the Portland Police Department that I help promote to move forward as lieutenant commanders.
I misspoke the question. I just wanted to find out if there was a male bias to protect the female.
Probably, yeah. Okay, so that's inherent to our nature. That makes sense. You know, but I can tell you pulling up on some terrible scene like, oh my God, what am I going to do? And I see a female pull up and I go, okay, she knows what she's doing. She is going to be good. I'm going, take the back, and then I'll see another police officer who was, you know, in poor shape, not well trained. I'm going, now I'm worried about him. It could go either way. So now we got this guy swinging a baby around an apartment. He's got the gas on. He's going to blow up the whole house. And I'm worried about this cop. So I'm going to give him a job as a supervisor to do something. But the female, I know it's going to be fine. And the reversal is too. Like I've been in other cases where a female pulls up and I go, oh my God, she's going to get killed, or we're going to get killed, because this is a violent person. So it's not specific, but inherently I think that goes away. I think initially you might feel that, but that all goes away because cops are cops, we're blue. That's how we look at it.
Okay,
Third question was.
sorry, we've run out of tape.
Wow.
We have time, but thank you very much. And please